In our world, everyone at some point needs the influence of others to help hit the mark they are aiming for. Those others often remain behind the scenes as they help pave the way. They are the Way Pavers. So we are here with Jack Griffin. Jack Griffin, who has had so much to do with the Boston music scene. Jack, so glad you're here with us. Thank you for taking the time out.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure indeed.
I want to start right from the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was your home family life? Tell us about that.
I'm a North Cambridge guy, as a matter of fact. I went to Catholic schools from K through 12. I went to St. John's Elementary and then North Cambridge Catholic High School. After that, it was Vietnam War and things like that, so we all went to college. Guys that never should have gone to college went to college. So I went over to Boston State, got a teaching degree, and got my BS in Ed. And I taught over at Somerville for 2 years. And the problem was, I was playing in bands. It's always a problem when you're playing bands, but I was playing in bands. I was playing in what they used to call show bands. We'd go different clubs all the time. You know the clubs that were around. And you'd play 40-20, 40 on, 20 off, either 5 or 6 nights a week.
So you were a guitarist.
A guitar player, vocalist, yeah.
Now I want to ask you, when you say in Somerville, what were you doing in Somerville? Were you teaching?
I was teaching, yeah.
Where?
I was what they call a permanent sub. I used to get a call every morning. My mother knew the person who booked the subs, so she said, just give me a job. So I used to get a call at 7 o'clock after being out till 2 in the morning and get up and teach and just go into these different classrooms all around Somerville and get out and go take a nap and then go back to work playing.
Now, what were you teaching?
I was teaching whatever they needed me to teach that time.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just, you've had subs in the school. But it was a permanent position. It was what they called a permanent sub. And I met everyone there, and I tried to... But I realized after a while, I said, this is not for me. I used to get a paycheck every 2 weeks of $150, which wasn't a lot of money. And I was making more playing at night. I was, making maybe $250 a week, and with different configurations of bands during different clubs paid different money. But I always had that income coming in, which allowed me to take the next step, which was across the street from where I grew up, on Mass Ave, right beside Frank's Steakhouse. My dad owned a funeral home across the street. And across the street from that was Communication TV, which is a TV shop, repair shop, that sold records. That's the name, Record Garage. The guy was retiring, and he said, listen, you want to take this over and do the records? And I said, yeah, I'll try that. So he was very happy.
So it was a record store.
It was actually a record store.
And this was, how old were you when this was happening?
Well, this was in, let me see, 49, 59, 69 was 20s. I got out of college when I was 71. So I'd be 22 there. So by the time I was 23, 24, I was all in.
But you were still playing.
I was still playing.
What bands were you in at that time?
We had a lot of bands. We had Paper Moon. Bands you'd have no idea. But we used to play different clubs. It was a different time back then. Most of the bands were, most of the clubs were, just scattered. So there was always a lot of driving. So I'd have to drive to Hopkinton or something to play. We used to play.
There were show bands where you did the top 40.
Top 40, whatever the songs were, that's what we were playing.
So your dad owned a funeral home?
My dad owned a funeral home.
Wow.
Up on Mass Ave in North Cambridge, Griffin Funeral Home.
So you see this place, it's a record shop.
Yeah, I used to hang out there. I used to buy my records, and I used to know the guy.
Just records?
Yeah, he was the TV repairman with records, but he wanted to get out of the record business part of it. And he was basically a gambler. He was a card player too, so he wanted to play more cards and free up some of his time. So he said, "Why don't you take over the record part of it?" Which I did, but I couldn't make any money because I was paying the rent, half the rent at this time, and then I ended up paying all the rent. But the rent wasn't bad. It was $100 a month back then. He said to me, this guy said to me, his name was Chris. He said, "Jack, you know music and stuff like that. You should get some music stuff." I said, "I don't have any money. I don't have any idea." You got to remember, I had no idea what I was doing at all. None at all. So he said, "You should do consignment." And I said, "Consignment? What's consignment?" So consignment, I come to learn, was people bring their stuff in, tell me what they want for it, and I add money on or take a percentage. So as a result, I took an ad out, I would consign your stuff, just word of mouth and things like that. I was always buying and selling music here, and I wasn't making enough money on the record, so I had to put something else in there. So I had to put music stuff in. So I started consigning music here. So that's where I met Peter Lembo. Peter Lembo, who we all know Peter. Peter used to go to the pawn shops over in Boston and pick out instruments and bring them to me to sell. And at one point, Peter had probably 10 or 15 pieces in there. After a while, after building up.
Guitars?
Guitars and banjos and amplifiers, pretty much everything. Then one day, the Aerosmith guys pulled up in a trailer, and they were getting rid of all their stuff, and they consigned all their old band gear. They were completely redoing their band gear in me. So it looks like after about a year and a half, I had a full store of musical equipment, Now
you say Aerosmith guys. You mean like Whitford and Perry?
Yeah, the whole. I don't remember who brought it over. It was probably one of the roadies, but it was actually in a trailer, pulled by a car, which was so that's very early for those guys. So they dropped all their stuff off, and I used to, the word of mouth got around, and then I used to advertise on this radio station. I forget what the name of the station was. But this woman came in, she was a sales gal, and she used to say, $15 a spot, I can give you an ad, late night radio. So I said, well, musicians listen late night. So I took an ad out, and this woman used to call me every Thursday or Friday, and I would give her a list of stuff that I had. I got a Stratocaster, and I have got a Marshall amp, and
wow.
So that's how all of a sudden all these other guys came in. How I met Billy Loosigian, Greg Tower, who just moved from Toledo, Ohio, and all these people started bringing stuff, and it sort of grew, and it grew pretty well.
Now you mentioned to me there was something about a sandwich board you would place out front of the store. What was that about?
Well, that was when I went. After a while, the guy, the building was sold, and the new guy bought the building. So I had to get out of North Cambridge. So I had to look for a place. So my dad knew this real estate guy, and he was a family friend or something. He says, "Well, he said, you want to go to Harvard Square? I got a place in a basement on the back end of the square by Charlie's Kitchen."
Wow.
And I said, I don't know, Harvard Square, blah, 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 blah. No parking. But there's a lot of people around. So I went down and looked at it, and I was like, okay, this will work. So again, it was $100 a month. So I'm taking the plunge now. Okay, I got to get the plunge. They're going to take from North Cambridge, where you can pull up and park and walk in and things like that. I have to go down to Harvard Square. And that worked out even better.
Really, because Harvard Square, for those who don't know, is a very tight, congested area that's visited constantly all day long with traffic and et cetera.
Well, it opened up because a lot of people, everyone knew how to get to Harvard Square, of course. So, the music was changing and things like that. And I can't stress this enough, I always had really good guys working for me, working with me.
I mean, from what I heard, it was a little before me, although I would spend every Sunday in the Cambridge Common watching the concerts and the hippies and everything. But this all had to have been around the same time, late 60s, early 70s, like 72.
I was in Harvard Square by 73. I was in Harvard Square at 73.
Yeah. So you were, from what I hear, it was one of these places that you sold some really classic guitars, a lot of Les Pauls, things of that nature. And I hear that a lot of people, especially like the guys like from Aerosmith and whatnot. Do you remember any of the specific guitars that you may have sold?
Yeah, one of the guys that used to work for me, Tony Cazzone, was a kid from, I think, the Lawrence area or something. I may be wrong on that. Anyways, Tony said one of the first guitars that comes to mind was, he said, I saw a guy playing in a band up here in Lawrence, and he's got a really old gold Les Paul, Gibson Les Paul. I was like, yeah. So I said, here, we had a black Les Paul custom. Here's $500 and a black Les Paul custom. Go up to the guy, see if he wants to swap it in. So next Monday he comes into work, and there's the gold top.
Wow.
So at this point I sort of knew some of the guys, but Brad Whitford was the guy who was really into old guitars. And I used to call Brad. I had his number. He was living in Framingham at the time. And Brad came down, and he bought the guitar. And as a result, anything really nice came in, I'd give Brad a call. And we'd come down, and we'd go get something to eat at Charlie's, and he'd buy the guitar from me. And it was a great system.
Now, do you remember, like, back in that time, what a guitar like that would... What did you sell?
$1,000.
Really?
$1,000.
Because today a gold top Les Paul from, what year was it probably?
Probably a 54, 55, real early. And as a matter of fact, I saw a thing with Brad. He did something for, I think, Guitar Player or something like that. He had a video, and he brought the guitar up. Someone gave me a heads up on it. And he brought the guitar up, and it was that guitar that I sold him. He still had it.
Wow. Now, I've spoken to Billy Loosigian, and he says a lot of wonderful guitars who went through that. Do you have any crazy stories about the Record Garage? Any stories of I want my money back, or this or that, or wait a minute, that's my guitar up on there? Did you ever have any of those problems?
Well, I had one problem one time. I got a call from this guy. I'm not going to mention his name. He said, someone just stole my bass. I said, really? I said, so what do you want me to do? He said, well, if they bring it to you, buy it and then call me and I'll just pick it up. So this sleazy guy comes walking down and says, you could always tell. If something was hot, it was always tell. But I said, okay. So I didn't ask any question, but it was exactly the one he described. So I bought it. I gave the guy like $100 or something like that. So he said, okay, fine. And so I called the guy and I said, listen, I just bought your bass. The guy brought it, who stole it, or someone who got it, after you stole it, brought it down to me. So about 20 minutes later, the Cambridge police come down and arrest me. But it was like a Saturday or something. So they really didn't arrest me. They're like, okay, well, we got to go to court on this. I explained the whole story to him. He said, well, we got to go to court Monday, so why don't you just show up at court Monday? I said, do I need a lawyer? Oh, I would get a lawyer. And I said, okay, fine.
You mentioned, we were chatting earlier, you mentioned about the great Billy West.
Billy West, oh yeah. Well, I had a number. Billy always, Billy and his buddy Timmy worked for me. And basically, they used to come in and hang out for a while, and they just hang out, and I just, needed someone would go away. I mean, the guys that worked there, Billy Cole, Billy Loosigian worked there for me, Tony Cazzone, David Hunt, and I forgive me for leaving people out, but Billy and Timmy worked there for me for a while. And Billy, same thing with him. He and Timmy played in the band, and they used to travel. Same kind of shows. They'd be up in Bangor, they'd do a gig in Bangor, and then they'd go up to New Hampshire somewhere, and they'd come back. And it'd always be kicking around during the day, so it became sort of a gathering spot. A lot of people. Jonathan Richmond used to come down there for hours and play. Now, Jonathan, he and Billy Cole were very tight, and he used to just sit on the floor and play acoustic guitars for hours and hours. But we had a lot of good stuff went through there. A lot of really nice guitars.
Lots of stories I hear about the place. I wish I had gone there. What years did you run the Record Garage?
Well, we opened it up at 73, and I moved to the Square, and then and it was there for a while. It was there until the music complex started, and I was supporting the music complex with the record garage, and I was still playing. And
so the record garage was still in existence when you started the Cambridge Music Complex. So I'm just going to clarify for the folks watching. Jack created what is basically the first rehearsal complex for bands in New England. I was fortunate enough to go there. I was 14 with my high school band, and we had a manager, my friend Frank, who was a couple years older than me, introduced us to the complex, and we got a room. We got a small rehearsal room, and it changed so many people's lives.
It was
Jack,
crazy.
can we start right from the beginning? When you first, how did the idea for the complex come up, and who helped you with it? How did it happen?
I'll tell you the whole story. Basically, two things came to play in it, first of which was my good friend Ron O'Dwyer, an Irish fellow who I went to grammar school with and I went to high school. He was always a year older to me, but we always hung out and things like that. And Ronnie was sort of shifting around. Ronnie O'Dwyer was like the most interesting person you'd ever want to meet. He would fly to over to Dublin to see a soccer match and fly back, a week later with stories. And he used to love to travel and things like that. But he was living in Cambridge, and he wasn't doing much. He was working for basically the IRA. He told me a story one time. He says, I don't know what I was doing. I was holding a gun on top of a building in Boston, and they were bringing some stuff in from Ireland. I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't working out. I said, what if I got something going here? Would you work with me on this? And he said, yeah. He said, what do you need? So I said, let me look out for a building. So again, I called my dad, and I said, Dad, I need that number of the real estate guy that got me the place in Harvard Square. So we started talking, and about 2 months later, he said, this place over in Cambridge just became available. It's a whole basement. And it used to be some sort of a research lab or a production lab or something. So there's a whole lot of smaller rooms, and then there's a whole lot of empty space out back. So I said, well, this could be it. So I went down there and I looked at it, and it was like, maybe 10 individual rooms that were already built. I'm like, okay, well, this is good. So again, I said, let me take a step back. The reason I thought about the rehearsal studios was the first place. I had a friend of mine who was an early roadie. He said, yeah, we went to this place in New York, Jack. He said it was great. It was a SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals. Everyone knows about them. And I got the absolutely wrong opinion of that. SIR, you go in and you rent it for an hour or two or a night or a couple of weeks, whatever and then you move your stuff back out. I thought people stayed there. So basically what happened was I thought, well, you bring your stuff in and you leave it there, and then so I thought you needed this whole giant place for bands to, bring their stuff in and stay there, which wasn't the case of SIR, but whatever. So I thought, well, it'd be nice if you could just leave your equipment there, go in and practice, and come back, and it would still be there.
Let me interject. That's what that was. You would rent a room by the month.
Right.
That's what we did.
4 7-day periods.
Oh, okay. It was wonderful for us. I was 14, 15, 16, and it was like having my own apartment. I just want to say, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that were affected by the music complex. You're talking about the great Ronnie, and we used to call him R.O.
R.O., yeah.
And he was always with Russell.
Russell is white dog. Yeah, the white shepherd.
So continue, please.
So Ronnie, basically, I would be working the store, and they're like, well, we need, $5,000 for this soundproofing that we're going to get and stuff like that. So the money that I was making down in Harvard Square, I put into the complex, and I had to, it was tight for a while. But after a while, we built out the rest of the buildings, and we came to the area in the back, and it was like enough room that you could put a stage in.
The sound stage.
The sound stage. And then we're like, should we make 4 rooms here, or should we make a stage, something special? So we decided, well, let's make a sound stage and see if anyone was there. And then I'm glad we did. And I'm glad we did, because that place could tell stories.
I have 100 of them.
I know.
So
the sound stage was amazing.
So you divided up this entire warehouse into some were small, independent.
Yeah.
You could go if you were. You needed a tiny room just for yourself to set up.
We used to call them drum rooms. We used to call them drum rooms.
Drum rooms, exactly. You had one of the some of the other bigger rooms were bigger bands.
Room 13,
Room 13 has a special place in my heart because what band came into there?
Well, Boston was one of the first bands. It was just the timing was pretty much right on. They were looking for. They just signed a deal. They had to rehearse because and they were going to have to go on a tour and stuff like that. So what happens is we had one room ready, and then this larger room became available, which they took. So they could put their road cases in there, and you could, it was room 13. It was good. It was lucky because I used to call it Lucky 13. But the main thing about the complex that I have to say is it was open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Guys like Scott Barenwald, Scott, bass player, and he played with
Ready Teddy, Robin Lane in the Chartbusters.
He was on MTV. He was on MTV, and he did a video with Robin Lane. He used to come in at night and work the night shifts. And security was the main thing with me. We were talking earlier about the big bolts and the chains coming around and stuff. I just want people to feel, that mentally that okay, this padlock's going on and no one's getting in here. And we used to give out IDs. That was Ron's idea. He said, you know what, let's get some IDs. So he found this place over in Watertown that we could laminate IDs, and we printed them out, and took a little picture and stuff like that. And
I have the first issued ID. For someone that was there. There was you, Ronnie, whoever else worked there, and I was I was only 14.
Yeah.
And a little bit about the wonderful security. So this building, you would enter upstairs, I think it was.
In the front, yeah.
And you would have to beep the front desk.
Yeah.
And whoever you had working there, we'd have our ID in room 8, and they would get the key and walk you to it, unlock it, and you had to contact them when you left so that it could be locked up.
That was the main thing. I mean, the whole thing would have fallen apart if someone had been able to go in there and take a truckload of stuff out of there.
Yeah, sure.
That's what kept me up at night.
So many people have fond memories of that place, Jack, and I'm sure people stop you today. Do you have any stories? You mentioned someone earlier.
Oh yeah. These, everyone said, "Were you Jack Griffin?" Yeah. I mean, I'm driving. The guy pulled up a red light, beeps. Hey, Jack. Yeah, Jack. Oh, this is 8 years ago, and he said, I was 16. I was down there, and my girlfriend down there. I was living large life. Oh my God, it was the best time of my life was down the complex. I'm like, well. That can be said for a lot of it. But the bands were just great. I mean, you'd walk down. Remember, there was a band, One People. They were a Rasta band. And they were there a lot. And they were there for years. And nice guys, just the nicest guys. Pretty much kept themselves. And they would fill the whole corridor up. They were down room, I forget what room number they were down there. But the whole corridor would be all full of weed. I mean, it's just great. And it gave people a place to play at night and to mingle and things. I remember one time Clive Davis was coming down to see a band, and the word got around. And so people were putting notes on the door, come on and hear my band and stuff like that. But it was that kind of an atmosphere, It was very, very communal.
Now, for people who have never seen it, there was a wonderful sub shop called Babos. That was located right in the middle of the parking lot, and everyone would go back and forth. Also, Jack, were you involved with upstairs? There was the famous Doug Doobie, who was a Hammond organ backline renter. He would rent out Hammond organs. That was called B3 Rentals.
B3 Rentals was up there.
Were you in charge of all of that as well?
Well, part of the whole downstairs is what we do, but there was a store upstairs. Again, going back to my buddy Peter Lembo, I first opened I said, let's sell some guitars out of here, Peter.
Wow.
And you could run it. And that's how Peter got into his management with the Stompers, and he started out
He's also a musician and singer.
Also a musician, Peter Lembo, absolutely. Yeah. And he got his start there. with managing, which you did a very good job. Mighty Sam McLean. He's again seeing the world in the music industry, and anyone who can do that to me, I got to hand it to him.
Yeah.
I got to hand it to him. Plus, there are a lot of bands who were really good, and they just didn't get the notoriety. It's just such a tough business. That's what you learned.
There was some great bands down there.
There was some great bands, and then the Cars came down. So we had this space upstairs. So Doug said, I met Doug, and I'm like, I can take it over. And I said, okay, fine. And do a couple of different things up there. I think Aztec was down there one time, and there was a speaker recalling company down there one time. But Doug was up there for a lot of years, and he used to have these. It was like a commune. Doug would be in and out, but there were people that lived there. There was this group of guys, the three brothers from Lowell, the Shirley brothers, their names were. And they did all the heavy lifting because Doug would have, grand pianos going out, B3s going out. And these guys, they were just, they were just the funniest guys. They were like brothers that fought all the time. They'd be fighting each other.
And Doug had them under his belt.
And they were living there. And Doug used to go, I feed you, I clothe you, and you do the work. It's very simple.
One other important thing that happened there, to say the least, was Boston, the genius behind the band, Tom Scholz.
Yep.
He not only created Boston, but he was also an inventor.
Yeah.
And he developed, he started the company Scholz Research and Development.
Yeah.
And he went on to develop the Rock Band.
Yeah, started with the Power Soak.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the Power Soak, which was a power attenuator. Tom asked me to give him a hand on had this idea, and I said, well, you have to go to this show. This is called the NAMM, National Association of Music Merchants. I said, that's where you should go. So he and I went out there, and I introduced him to this fella, Andy Jacoby, who was a GHS Strings rep. Now, the GHS Strings reps were just a group of independent guys that covered the whole country. And they'd sell GHS Strings, and they'd sell, whatever other companies that they were working for. You'd have a salesman all the time. They would come into the store and sell you what you needed. I mean, it wasn't like no computers, no ordering. They'd come in and write a number for what you want. And Tom got to meet some of these people, and eventually I went to work for Tom. I was sales manager. I was the national sales manager. We used to go to the shows and stuff like that. And eventually, the other space that was over there was some mattress guy who used to be have the other half of the building on the other side, who was just so upset that the music complex was there during the day. Because, not that a lot of bands practice during the days, but the bands that would practice there, the soundproofing never quite worked the way I envisioned it working, but it worked enough. So if you were playing in one room, you could hear the other band, but once you started playing, you couldn't hear them. Yeah. It was good. It worked enough.
We called it the oatmeal on the wall.
Yeah,
it looked like oatmeal.
Yeah, but it was a fire retardant, fire resistant soundproofing. But the guy in the mattress factory, he finally retired or something. So that space became available, and by this point, Tom Scholz was going into production. So he took the space over there, and eventually, my buddy Ronald Dwyer, after everything had settled down, I got to go back a little bit, because after a while, I had to go back to the music complex. I had to close the store in Harvard Square, which I eventually didn't close. I sold it to someone, and they carried it on for a while. And I just worked at the complex all the time. So it was just getting out of hand. We had, 40 rooms at one point. And it was a full-time job. And Ron went to work for Scholz, and he developed, he was in charge of all the production and stuff like that. And Johnny A. worked there. Greg Tower worked there. It was like and we met our times then.
Such great times.
Yeah, they're really good times. Yeah, and it was all the mixing of people that worked. My brother-in-law, my only brother-in-law, well, I have two brother-in-laws, but my first brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he worked there. So it was like a family thing, and it was nice. It was a good time.
It's amazing to sit here and talk to you. When I contacted you, I was like ecstatic, because it was such an important part of my life, still is. As we can see here, You're still dabbling with
I know. I still have
with some guitars.
the disease. I
Jack,
buy and
what's
sell.
going on now with you?
I buy and sell.
Yeah.
I still buy and sell. I run my ad every day in the Herald.
That's great.
Yeah, I've been doing it for like 30 years. And people call me. It's what I do. I like going out. I like meeting the people and hearing the stories. This is my husband's, and and I said, well, I'm going to find it a good home.
Yeah.
And how much you want? Well, all right. Well, maybe I could do this and that. But that's what I do. And I've got a new circle of people that send all the stuff out, get it all fixed up, get it all repaired. And
obviously, this is what you were meant to do.
That's pretty much all I could do. Once I decided I wasn't going to teach anymore.
Well, I got to tell you, thank God for you, Jack.
Oh, please.
I just want to say, I hope you don't mind. Maybe we can check back in with you.
Absolutely.
We have. This is going to be a little series I want to put together.
Good.
Some people who have really helped out the music scene in Boston.
Yeah.
And you were the first one that came to mind. Jack, we love you and appreciate you, and we're so glad that you spent some time with us today.
I appreciate that, David. I much appreciate it. Really do.
You're welcome. You haven't heard the last of me.
I really feel honored.
Jack Griffin, folks.
Thank you very much.
Hey, everybody. I am here with the extremely talented and now famous Billy West. He's known for so many amazing voiceover talents, such as Nickelodeon's Doug and Ren and Stimpy. Oh, my. Also, he's done voices for Warner Brothers' Space Jam and also the portrayal of Philip J. Fry on the cartoon Futurama. But what folks probably aren't aware of is how an amazing guitarist and musician he is. Billy West, thank you for joining us here today. We are excited.
Oh, hey, it's good to see you.
How did you meet Jack? How did you find out about all that?
I used to go down the record garage and I used to just sit around and play and, get in Jack's hair. And I'd bring my friend Timmy, and the two of us were like, I don't know. They called us the Ball Brothers, right and left. But we were like upstarts. We were comedic, and we used to just launch into these crazy ass things. It was like watching two Robin Williamses playing guitar down there. And anybody that saw it will tell you it was just nuts. But yeah, we started working for Jack, me and Timmy, as did a few other musicians. And I would go down on Saturday mornings, hungover as a bastard, and open the store. And the record garage was downstairs. It was at 12A Elliott Street, if I'm not mistaken. And it was underneath an eatery called Charlie's Kitchen. And it was the ass end of Harvard Square.
Right.
And it was just a fascinating place because there were all the college people, and all the musicians would go there. All the musicians would stop by, all the guitar players, because we sold used guitars and amps, and and it was hot shit equipment. We didn't know it at the time, but there was stuff that would become so collectible, that you'd be like, oh my God, how, if we only knew. Well, because it was that strange time when guitarists still loved the Ventures, and wanted to play Mosrite guitars, the Ventures models, but they certainly weren't meant for rock and roll, and especially heavy metal and all the stuff that was starting to come out. Those guitars were not meant for that. Right. Only the smarter guys wanted the old stuff. There was still guitars from the 50s, Les Pauls from the 50s. But yes, it's fun to talk about the old days, especially Jack Griffin, my old friend. I'm going to call him right now, as a matter of fact. Yes, because we're pals, and I love the guy, and I love a lot of my old friends, and I'm hoping to make it to Boston very soon.
The great Billy West. Billy, we love you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Right now, we are joined by a musician, a singer, a guitarist, and then he became a wonderful person who managed bands in New England and Boston. We are joined by Peter Lembo. Peter, how are you?
Great, David. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining us here. Tell us how you were involved with Jack way back in the 70s when he, before the music complex, when he started the Record Garage.
Well, the original record garage was in North Cambridge, and Jack and I were both in the musical instrument business, buying and selling used gear. He did it through a store, and I did it through magazines and advertising. And we were actually competitors. And I used to just go out on Saturdays looking around to pawn shops and, want advertiser things and going to people's homes and buying gear. And then I would stay home and sell it and in my parents' basement. And that's how I paid my way through college, surprisingly. My folks didn't have the money to send me to school, so that was my ticket, through 4 years of college.
So you would get
Um,
these instruments and bring them to Jack, bring them
well,
to the
that's what
record garage?
eventually happened. Rather than me having to babysit at home on Sunday and have people come up or cancel, I just got everything and dropped it off at Jack's. And Jack would say, "How much do you want for it?" I'd give him a price. And then the next Saturday, I'd go back, drop off more stuff, and pick up the cash. It was great. And that's how we became friends. We were actually competitors, and then we became friends.
Jack also
So,
told me that you were down there and you saw all the folks that were hanging out there. It became kind of a social event down there with a lot of the guitars. Billy West, I just
when
spoke with Billy West.
when when he moved to Harvard Square, it was definitely a social event. Jonathan Richman would be sitting on the floor. That's where I met Johnny A, who's still one of my best friends. It was amazing, It was truly, truly amazing. All of the people that came and went out of that store. And it was in the basement. I mean, you really had to look for it to find it. And I was there every Saturday hanging out, and then we'd go to Charlie's Kitchen upstairs for double cheeseburgers. So that was my Saturday day.
Wow. And when I spoke to Billy West, he said he really had a great time going down there. Him and his friend, I believe the gent's name was Tim? Timmy?
Timmy Reagan,
Okay. Yeah.
the funniest human being you'll ever meet in your life.
Billy's pretty funny himself.
You know what? The unfortunate thing is when you put them together, Timmy outlaps Billy. Timmy is hilarious, okay? They could have been a comedy duo and been very successful. But Billy came to my house almost every Sunday and played every guitar and amp I ever had for sale. And he never bought anything, but it was cool having him around back when he was Billy Wirstein.
Now, time went on, and Jack had the record garage, and then, of course, he opened up the Cambridge Music Complex. Tell us a little bit about your experience at the
Well,
Cambridge.
I was out of work, and Jack had a friend of his, Ronnie O'Dwyer, who helped him build the rooms and everything. And then Jack just said to me, "Hey, I'm going to open a little music store upstairs. So why don't you just come and run the music store for me?" And then he told me about this great band from Boston called Boston. We'd never heard of them. They broke on WMMR in Cleveland, and nobody here knew who they were. And all of a sudden, More Than a Feeling finally hit Boston radio, but there was no band. So they rented room 13, which, as you know, was the big practice room at the
Yep.
complex. And I used to go downstairs and listen to them rehearse. No band rehearsed during the day except Boston. Jack was so amazing. He helped so many people out. I mean, show me one person who couldn't pay the rent for a month and didn't got thrown out. He gave everybody a break. He came up with a great idea. I mean, nobody had that idea. I had been at SIR in New York, but nobody had the idea of a rehearsal studio, in Boston or Cambridge. I mean, it was novel and brilliant. Um, Jack was just way ahead of his time. The used instrument business, he started that in Boston, and then the rehearsal space. It was just incredible. Jack, Billy, they're all top-notch humans, you know? And you weren't too bad yourself, by the way, you know? You were a hell of a good musician, buddy. Jack, this is all because of you, my friend, and I hope everything is well with you. And, you know, I don't know what we're doing hanging around with this bum interviewing us, but it's a lot of fun seeing old friends, even if it is over the computer. But it's great to see you, David. Honest to God, it's great to see you.
God bless you, Peter. Folks, the great Peter Lembo. Pete, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, David. Take care, brother.
You too. Here's a Boston legend, guitarist Billy Loosigian. He's played with folks like Willie Alexander in the Boom Boom Band, the Joneses, and Andy Pratt. Billy was one of Jack Griffin's earliest employees down at the record garage.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember what year. It was the early 70s, 72 maybe. And he was sharing a storefront. It was his girlfriend's father who repaired televisions. And it was right near Cameron Avenue on Mass Ave. A friend of mine that I grew up with, who played, he and I learned how to play guitar together, had heard about this shop that was a consignment shop that had guitars. So we took the drive into the city, which, you know, I was in Salem, New Hampshire, and we went and saw this store, and I was where he met Jack. We were like checking out guitars he had, and I don't know, he was just a friend. Jack was friendly, and he was sold records, and he had guitars. And I remember he had Peter Green's, was Legend, that's what it was. I had heard he had Peter Green's Strat for sale. I think I was the first employee that worked for Jack, because he was just a single-man operation. He had moved the store from Mass Ave to Harvard Square, 12A Elliott Street, which was the basement, and he wanted some freedom. So he asked me if I'd do the job, if I wanted to work there, and I thought about it for a couple of days, and I took the gig. Well, the only time I hated the job was when he would send me out to go clean the pit, which was this like dugout area for a window, and people just threw their trash in it, and I'd have to go out and clean that, or organizing the case room. But I was okay. But it was the pit thing that I didn't like doing. But other than that, I love the job. I still have great memories of it. Jonathan Richman used to come in and serenade. You know, this was Jack wasn't around. He'd take off. He'd do his errands and stuff. And then when he got the complex going, he was hardly ever there. He's starting to build it up. I also remember Billy West and his buddy Timmy coming in and hanging out, and they were like very entertaining. It was like a comedy duo. And Billy's an amazing player. He taught me how to play a couple parts that Jeff Beck record that I still, that if somebody asked me how to play that, I go, oh, that's Billy West showed me how to do that. The Cambridge Music Complex. Well, I was working the shop and he wasn't in, and I remember him coming down the stairs, slapping his keys on the counter, going, I found a location. And he just was all excited, all hyped up about this space he found. I think it was the Lehigh Metal Building. I think that's what it was called. And it was off Fresh Pond. And he had a plan that he was going to set it up so it would be like a rehearsal spaces. And he would rent them out, because that's probably a problem for everybody. To get to rehearse in people's basements. It's like this way. It was like a studio place, and he was he just started, him and this guy Ronnie O'Dwyer started developing the space, and it was just an old kind of commercial building that with a loading dock. I remember it had a big loading dock with a long ramp going downstairs. I rehearsed there with a band I had in 81. 1980. I rehearsed there with the Jackals. Jack was a great guy. I loved working for him. I loved hanging out with him. I got to know his family. And he's still around, unlike a lot of people that I miss.
We are joined right now by Johnny Barnes, the incomparable Johnny Barnes. John, good to see you. Thank you for being on the show here, the Way Pavers. How are you?
Nice to see you, David. Still good to see you around, and still good to see people rocking and rolling.
And John, you are a pillar in the rock and roll history of Boston, so we had to contact you and tell us how you first met Jack. Give us how that all happened.
Well, he had the record garage right in Harvard Square, and I lived on the other side of Harvard Square. I was driving a taxi cab when I first moved to Boston, and jamming on Mass Ave and Roxbury and anywhere else I could, and started a blues band playing the Speakeasy in Cambridge. Living right there in Harvard Square, I soon stumbled upon the record garage. There was only one other music emporium that really meant anything at the time. That was EU Wurlitz's on Newbury and Mass Ave. Great place. You could get anything there from organs to guitar strings. But the record garage was local for me, and he had a lot of great vintage guitars hanging in there. And Jack was sort of a father or an older brother figure for me. He let me go in there and sit around and play guitars for hours. And he had another guy, Ronald Dwyer, working there, his brother, Willie, and I think maybe another brother, Kevin. You have another brother, Kevin?
Yep, Kevin.
So they were all there and at various times manning the controls. So I hung around there a lot. One story I can tell you is I had a Flying V, and I think I was the first kid in Boston to have the Flying V, and I played it all the time. And I'd go to a gig and people would yell, "Where's the V?" You know, because I would like to play my Strat sometimes, or Les Paul or something. So they'd yell, "Where's the Flying V? Where's the Flying V?" So I got aggravated, took it down to Jack at the record garage and said, "Here, I don't want this. I need something else." So I saw this Les Paul Jr. Just had two little pickups, couple switches, very lightweight, beautiful neck, and the humbucking pickups would scream. So I bought it for, I think, $850.
Tell us your beginnings down there at the Cambridge Music Complex, Johnny.
Well, I was rehearsing down there, and I had a record out, Steel Rail Blues, and I was managed by Andy Bobian at WBCN, so I was getting tons of airplay for Steel Rail Blues. In my apartment, we would glue the record jackets together. I would get the records printed up, and we would glue the record. Billy Perry, she's married to Joe Perry now. Billy and I lived together for a few years, and we would glue all the record jackets together and mail them out everywhere and sell them, and on street corners at gigs. So we're down the music complex, and they had a room with a pinball machine and some snacks and machines and stuff. So if you're not playing or working, you get tired, you go down there and you play some pinball. So I would be playing pinball down there, and these guys would come in, Sibby Hasheen and Barry Goodrow, and they were in a band called Mother's Milk. And they had just started changing their name to Boston, and Tom Scholz had done the entire first album, and they were learning it note by note. And so they were down there, and there was another band called Captain Swing. They changed their name to the Cars while they were down there, and they started working with Rick and Ben's high-octane songs they were writing. And so they would all hang around there, and, other bands would come and go. They had a showcase room where some bands would showcase for record companies or just for local talent, or shoot a video in there with really good lighting and good sound. There was a sound system there. And it was just a great place for that. So there was a lot of bands hanging around Private Lightning. I can't possibly remember them all. I came home from a gig one night very late. In fact, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. And Billy threw me out. So I started living at the Cambridge Music Complex. I would sleep on the floor on like an air mattress with a sleeping bag. And, you said it was like an apartment. Well, it literally was my apartment for a while. But it was a great place. And for networking, it was incredible. When I moved to New York for a year to play with a band called Rock City, and they had places that you could rent by the hour to rehearse. But the Cambridge Music Complex, we rented it by the month, and we just, go down there any time. It was 24/7. Great guy, Ronald Dwyer, was down there, Irish guy speaking with an accent, and it's just a great warm place. And that's the kind of place that Jack fostered, friendly. It was all about the music and people trying to make it. And Boston got very hot. And some people made it, and some people drifted into oblivion. I'm still putting out records, though.
Is there any message you'd like to give Jack?
Yeah, keep on doing what you're doing. And do you have any vintage J200s at your house?
We are featuring someone that I have been watching and learning from since I was a teen. He's been in all kinds of bands as the lead vocalist and guitarist. He was in Live Lobster. He was in Balloon. He was in The Enemy. Then he was in this band with some guy from Aerosmith. Oh, yeah, Joe Perry. He was in the Joe Perry Project. He is still rocking out. He's tall. He's good looking. He's got all his hair. He stayed thin. I just saw him perform a couple of weeks ago, and his voice sounds like he's 26, and it's getting annoying. Another legend I get to speak with, everybody, Charlie Farren. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, it's fun to be here. I'm here with my friend, Chico.
Chico and the man. This is good. Now, how did you like my intro?
It was very nice. Very good. Very well done.
Thank you. So, I know we spoke briefly about you being back in the day in the 70s when Jack Griffin created the Cambridge Music Complex, probably one of New England's first multi-roomed music rehearsal space. So
yeah.
You got some stories. Let's hear some stories there, Charlie.
Well, so firstly, we rehearsed when we first put Balloon together. That was my first all-original band. It was my first band. I was in another band called Live Lobster, which was a cover band, and that wasn't my group. And that was before the time of the music complex. But when radio started really supporting local original bands, a lot of those bands started, and they needed a place to rehearse and a place to put their gear, kind of a hub of activity. And the Cambridge Music Complex was the place, and at first we would rehearse there. They were tiny little rooms, and they had no windows and they had no ventilation, and they had this some kind of a mulched paper sprayed on the walls and ceilings, and it was dusty and horrible. But it was there would be sometimes a dozen or more bands playing at the same time, so you could just hear this. But you ran into people in the corridors, and it really became a community, and a place to go and a place to hang out, to not only to visit with folks, but also to kind of listen to see what they were doing and map what you were doing to that, right? So I lots of other bands played there. I remember talking with Gary Hoey there, and that's how I met Gary. was in the corridors of the music complex, I'd kind of listen and hear playing that real fast, really accomplished guitarist. So there was always, night and day, from the morning until the morning, there would be activity there because people would have a gig in New York and you'd play until 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you'd drive home and unload the truck to the music complex. So it was really a hive of activity for a long time. It was a place to be.
Now, you told me briefly about a young band that was there, and you were kind of witnessing what was going on. The Dream, who went on to become Extreme. You wandered into their room. Tell us that story you shared with me.
So this was it's kind of like, I don't know the exact time frames, but in this particular story, it was when Nuno was in the group. So that would be after I was with the Joe Perry project, came back and started The Enemy. And we would rehearse. We were mostly just storing our gear there at that point because we didn't rehearse that much anymore. We were kind of established at that point. But I was down there one particular day, and I heard, you hear people in their rooms, and I heard boom, 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 and sawing, and and I popped my head in the door, and I said, "What the heck are you guys doing?" And they said, "Well, we're building ramps." And I said, "Ramps?" They said, "Yeah." I mean, they were playing places like Jumbo's and Bunratty's, and you could barely just get a drum kit and your equipment on stage. They were building ramps. I said, "What are you building ramps for?" They said, "Well, we climb up on the ramps during the show, And I just thought to myself, they've just taken it to the next level, right? I recall talking with Paul. Paul Geary was the drummer at the time, and he was also kind of serving as the manager. And whenever they would come and do shows with us, I would see Gary and Paul. They would show up early, which is what I did when I was at that point. I'd get there for load-in because I wanted to see where did they put their road cases? How did they deal with their crew? How did they, everything. I wanted to know everything. What kind of tape did they use? How did they wrap their cables? And I was really studying it. I felt like I was going to school. And those guys were the same exact way. And when I saw, and so Paul would tell me, they'd see our drum riser and say, "Look, they have 4 lights behind the drum riser. That looks great. Okay, we need to have 6 lights." They just say, "Okay, that looks cool. We got to outdo that." So I just thought, like, okay, these guys are just going above and beyond anything I ever thought of. They're building ramps like you see at a big concert, but they're playing at Jasper's, and I just knew then that they were going to really pop because they were always a dynamite band, but they were really going above and beyond, and I just was laughing out loud, thinking, okay, this is the next generation, right? I mean, we were like a 10 years ahead of those guys in terms of age. So they were, when I was in my early 30s, they were just turned to 20,
I love that you said how you would hear saws and banging, and this is at the music complex, and that was the great thing about Jack. Jack just like, go ahead, everybody, yeah, let's do it. That's a great story. But like you said, I mean, I got to meet so many people, and I got to meet the great Brad Delp.
Yeah,
I got to hear about all the different bands, your band, Calamity Jayne, Johanna Wild. I mean, all of you guys are the legends. You guys were the Way Pavers as well.
Well, I think that there are people who are, the writers for the Globe, the DJs on the radio, the people in popular bands, and people hear about those folks. But what Jack did was he enabled a community to develop. And when everyone's in the same building, whether they're, in high school, just trying to start a group, 3 or 4 chords, or whether they were, recording artists who just needed a place to store their gear.
Folks, we've had Charlie Farren here tell us some classic stories. Charlie, thanks so much. We will talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, Chico. There he is.
There I am. Hello, sir.
You bastard with all that hair. I don't dare turn around.
You know what? I was talking to my wife. Both and I, for whatever reason, our hair grows like crazy. So I've got to get a haircut sometime this week because it's in my eyes and my face. So never mind about that.
Lucky. Yeah, mine grows like mad too, out of my ears now. And each hair is about this thick.
Oh, that's fun.
Get the bolt cutters. He's one of the most talented people we've ever had come from our area, and he was nice enough to say, yep, I want to get on here and talk about the early days. Folks, here he is, Jon Butcher. Hi, Jon.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
God bless you, man. Thank you for coming along here on this episode.
Absolutely.
Jon, give us a little story from the past about Jack Griffin, maybe the Record Garage, and certainly the Cambridge Music Complex.
Okay. So I have to set the stage first by telling you that I was in the band Johanna Wild at the time that we first got acquainted with Jack and the complex. And at that time, we were just beginning, the band Johanna Wild was just beginning to be noticed. We were selling our rooms, and WBCN got a hold of a tape that we made, a song called Suzanne. And so I share this with you to say that that's how I ended up going to the music complex and rehearsing. We were rehearsing to go on a short tour of the Midwest, where we had never been before. But we'd had behind us the support of WBCN and all of this great ink, and the Boston Globe and the Phoenix, saying that we were just the hottest stuff, whatever. So when I got there and met Jack, it was because I was going to buy a guitar. He at the time he also sold guitars. He had guitars and instruments anyway. So there I am, and we're talking. And if you remember what he looked like back then, with the beard and the thing, and so we haggled on this guitar, and we haggled back and forth. And I said, well, look, why don't we work something out where I can rehearse here and blah, blah, blah. Make a long story short, that was the beginning of a friendship that lasted decades, literally decades. And I know I speak for many guitar players like myself who went there looking for guitars or to rehearse their band. And so my memories of those times are really great. Boston was a great place to be a band coming up. Terrific. We had colleges, we had nightclubs and larger venues. And if you could fill them, they'd let you play there. So I came up at a really, really the golden era, I think, along with Boston and other bands. I mean, too many to name, that had the boost of WBCN and had the boost of Jack at the music complex. Jack, in any case, I wish you well. I'm sorry we haven't seen each other for so long, and I look forward to making contact with you soon.
He was once a member of the Boston-based band Calamity Jayne, an original founding member in Brad Delp's Beetlejuice. Here is keyboardist Stephen Baker.
Jack Griffin. Let's see, going back to, I met Jack when he owned the Record Garage, when he was in Harvard Square. All I remember, it was downstairs, and it was just chock full of guitars and repair guys. And at the time, I was playing in a Boston band called Calamity Jayne, and playing keyboards. And the guitar player in that band, Jack, he used to buy guitars from Jack Griffin, and I would go down there, a lot. We lived in Brighton, so we'd go over to Harvard Square fairly regularly, and he purchased all kinds of guitars there and all. And Jack was a real friendly guy, great. Just a really good person, and he gave great deals. So anyway, life moves on, and probably, I'm dating myself, 40 years later, I'm playing in a band with Brad Delp from Boston, called BeatleJuice. We're doing all Beatle music, and we were playing at Johnny. But before that, somebody had told me that Jack Griffin owned a place right outside of Davis Square. I think it was on Holland Street, I think it was. And so I know, oh wow, Jack's still around. So we're playing at Johnny D's, we're doing sound check, and I played some guitar in that band, so I had a guitar amplifier, which blew up at sound check. And then I remembered, somebody said Jack Griffin has a place like right down the street. So I walked down the street. I'm freaking out. I have no amplifier, and we're playing in like 4 hours. So I see the music store, and I saw a nice Fender twin reverb in the window. And I went, oh, that would be so great for this gig. I go in, there's Jack behind the counter. And so after we talked for a while, I said, I told him what had happened. I need a guitar amp. Can I rent a guitar amp from you? I said that, deluxe reverb in the window looks perfect. And he said, well, what you really need for that gig, you really need a Vox AC30. And that was just in my dreams, an AC30. I couldn't afford an AC30. And I said, why, do you have one? I thought he was joking. And he goes, yeah, I got one in the back room. I went, you really? Prove it. He went in the back room and brought it out. I was like, oh my God, and he said, just take it, use it for the week. We were playing 2 nights there. We were playing Friday and Saturday. It was Memorial Day weekend. I remember that. And I had a gig on Sunday, so I needed it for 3 days. And so he just said, take it. And once I plugged into it, I said, that bastard, I have to buy this thing. So anyway, I brought it back on Tuesday. I told him I wanted to buy it. And I won't say for how much, but it was an unbelievably good deal. And the amp was in pristine condition. And so that was the last time I saw Jack. Was then. I ended up buying the amp, gave him cash. And that amp's still alive today. Needs a little work, but Jack Griffin, he saved me, a few times, bailing me out with that, amplifier for 3 days. I would have been up the creek without a paddle. So, Jack was, always, a good businessman and a compassionate guy, a really good guy. Those are my memories of Jack.
Hello, everybody. We are excited today. We are joined by the incredible, amazing, generous background vocalist, bassist for the extremely successful band Extreme. And when he's not out touring the world with that band, he's the lead vocalist, guitarist for a wonderful tribute to the Eagles called Dark Desert Eagles. And we have today Pat Badger. Pat, thank you for being here, brother.
Wow, that's quite an intro. I Venmo you or you want me to PayPal you for all those kind words?
I had to rehearse it. And then I said, you're going to have to leave out a lot of stuff or else it's going to take up this whole segment. I know that before Extreme was Extreme, they were in a band called The Dream, and they had different members. But then afterwards, they changed some of the members. You came on board and they became Extreme. Pat, tell us about all of this. Tell us how this stuff happened.
Well, I guess the birth of it, like you said, was at the Cambridge Music Complex because I remember being like in high school or just out of high school hearing about a band called The Dream. And I remember my friends from high school would tell me, yeah, we just went into Record Town in the Meadow Glen Mall. And this freaking guy's there with the long hair and a blonde streak. And it ends up that was Gary Sharon that used to work at the register at Record Town. So, I mean, we're all local guys, Medford, Malden. I was from Winchester. So Gary was a little bit of like, before I even, heard the band, The Dream or Extreme, he was a bit of, we used to chat about him in high school because he was like, looked like a legitimate rock star, but he was like at the Meadow Glen Mall, right? So, but anyway, the band The Dream had rehearsed at the Cambridge Music Complex, which we're talking way back, like, in the mid 80s. So I knew, I worked at a guitar shop in Winchester. Do you remember Jim Meridian?
Yes, of course.
So I worked at Jim Meridian's guitar shop when I was in high school, and I used to paint and build custom electric guitars for people and stuff. And one day, this kind of young, scrawny kid, same age as me, walked in, and he said he came from Hudson, Mass, and his name is Nuno. And I met him at in that guitar shop. So a lot of Extreme's history does come to, full circle around that time. And Nuno, he had told me, I had played in another couple of bands, like right in that era, in high school and then right out of high school. And I had known about the Cambridge Music Complex, but it wasn't until when I met Nuno at Meridian's, he had asked me, hey, we're doing this thing on Halloween. And he had just joined Extreme, like he had just replaced the two other guitar players. And he asked me, he goes, hey, we're doing this thing on Halloween. You remember, of course, Jim Blute from Narcissus and Celebration. And he was kind of like a manager. He managed a few bands like Shout back in the day. So this was before tribute bands were even a thing. Like this was like kind of, I think he was ahead of his time, but he's like, Halloween, I want to have this show where I get all these guys from the Boston bands to all emulate their favorite bands. So the guys from Extreme asked me, Nuno said, hey, do you want to like, then we'll do an Aerosmith set and we'll dress like them and we'll just kind of pay tribute to Aerosmith. And again, this was like decades before like tribute bands were even like a big deal. So I'm like, of course, I'm all in. I love Aerosmith and a chance to play with, Extreme or the Dream guys. So I met those guys down at the Cambridge Music Complex. And I remember it was room 13. Which had some significance because I had heard that I think the Cars may have played in there. Yep. Boston played in room 13, right? So I remember going in there and playing with those guys, and we learned like, I don't know, 5 or 6 Aerosmith songs, and then played together on Halloween. But that was like my first real introduction to the Cambridge Music Complex. I was just blown away, like this warehouse full of bands and amps and guitars and drums. Like it was like, a kid in a candy store. So that was my introduction to the Cambridge Music Complex.
That's what's wonderful now about this series that I'm doing. It's a tip of the hat to Jack because we owe him that. And he was
well, thank you, Jack, because that place was a big part of my, adolescence, just freshly out of high school, and really part of what it was my backstory of what launched me into the music business. Really. So yeah, hats off to Jack. That's amazing.
Someone I've known since I was a late teenager, just starting out in music. He's from New England. He's been in all kinds of incredible bands in the Boston area. Oh, starting back, I first started seeing Joe in Luna. And then I saw him in a band called Berlin Airlift. And then he was with Joe Perry from Aerosmith in the Joe Perry Project. He's someone that I would go see in nightclubs play and wondered, how the heck am I going to compete with something like that? I got to talk with him. He's become a friend. He's a bit of a mentor. And he's one of the big reasons I went on to play drums. As a profession, he's a fellow Italiano, Joe Petrozelli, who's known simply and affectionately as Joe Pet. Joe, welcome. Thanks for hanging out here.
Thank you, David.
Yeah,
that was a very nice intro.
I have to. I mean, I'm interviewing you people, and you're all like legends. The Cambridge Music Complex. You were there. And
I certainly was.
What band were you down there with?
That goes back a long way, Dave. I think I started with my own band. I had an original band, Cloud. It was a prog rock band, 3 pieces. I wrote most of the material, sang, lead singer when I had a voice. And it was a very interesting time period. There were like great bands in there. The Cars, Till Tuesday, I mean, you name it, they were there. In fact, I'll have to take you down the hall. I've got this little hall of shame, and it's now my little kiddie's home. And I've got all these pictures and posters and records that I've done and all kinds of stuff. And here is my first card that I got. I think I was number, what does it take? I can't see it. 287, 237. And
is that one of the complex IDs?
Yes. Wow. It was kind of a fun place to be. And since everybody was on the music scene that were rehearsing there for the most part, we got to hang with a lot of these people. It wasn't more like going out to see them play at the Rat or whatever. We got to shoot the shit and have some fun and get very friendly. We were all down there, and I was getting married, and I was thinking of, we were thinking of a place, and back then nobody had any money, and I loved the soundstage. Oh, wow! So I think I asked Jack if we could have the wedding at the soundstage at the Cambridge Music Complex. And he said, yeah, sure, man, whatever you want to do. And I got to tell you, to this day, some of my relatives say it's the best wedding they've ever been to. Yeah, the sound booth, engineer right there. And it was funny because the band that I asked to be the band at the wedding reception was Berlin Airlift. Wow. And that was our first gig. First gig.
Wow.
And it was just so cool. We had everybody in the family was really cool and plenty of room for everyone. And it was just so casual. And we had a great time. We really did. Jack, it was good talking to you a couple of weeks ago. Would love to get together with you. Hope everything's well. Keep in touch, and looking forward to seeing you.
Darling, share us some stories. Tell us a little bit about how you got down to the complex and etc.
A couple of the bands I worked for were stabled there. the Dream Extreme, and Mass. Mass was there forever. And the complex was always warm and it was safe. And the people that ran the place, Jack, of course, but the people that were there 24/7 to let you into the rooms and, handle any issues, they were the best and they were hilarious, which made it more fun. Danny Hargrove, rest in peace. Mondo
Lobotomy.
Just the coolest dude. I mean, just a cool dude. Kevin, who worked there, who ended up going to work for me as Mass's drum tech later on. Just a tremendous group of people. It was always fun to be at the complex because you never knew who you were going to bump into, and the rooms were clean. They were safe. The loading dock was terrific. And for people like me, for the folks that worked for me for the cruise, it just made a very long day a little easier. The really cool thing about being at the complex and seeing Jack was kind of like seeing Dad. How'd the show go? How's it going? And he would induce that conversation if you were having a problem with a guitar player or, which is common. Whatever. He was interested. He cared what was going on in the lives of the bands. He was genuinely interested. He wasn't just the guy that you rented a space from. It was comforting. It was nice. Miss Jack. And I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I really hope I'm blessed with that opportunity to see him again. Hey, Jack.
We are here with someone that I've known for a long time, a great drummer. He is one of the original people that were down there rehearsing at the Cambridge Music Complex, and he's one of the only people that still has the ID. I'll show you that later. He was the drummer for, I think, the Aerosmith tribute band at the time down the complex, Last Child. Here he is. Welcome to the show, Phil Lorenzo. Hello, Phil. How are you?
Hi, Dave. I'm doing great. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being on this episode. Fill us in about when you first started down there at the music complex and who you were playing with.
It's in 4 or 5 bands down there that rehearsed in various rooms or whatever. Friend of mine who you might recall, Somerville drummer Patrick O'Neill.
Oh, yeah.
He actually brought me down there to audition for the first band down there, Ava Electris. She was a exotic dancer and a singer. That was my first introduction to that. But in that band, I also met the future members of the Aerosmith tribute band, which formed shortly after that. Ray Tabano, the original guitar player from Aerosmith, had something to do with both of those bands. I'm not quite sure what, but he was around. I remember at one point we shared a room with the Dream or Extreme. They were right at that transition point. A lot of things went on down there. I'm not sure I can repeat them all. It was a fun place, a fun time, great time. The 80s, man, come on. Okay, and as far as Jack Griffin, Jack, if you're out there, which I'm sure you will be seeing this at some point, miss you, buddy. A lot of great times. Hope all is well with you, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Take care.
Please like and subscribe to the Window YouTube channel. You'll be notified when more great episodes are featured on Window. And of course, I thank you for your support.